Listen up, family, this is Denzel Washington. And I'm coming to you with a truth that's going to shake your soul and light a fire in your spirit. Right now, wherever you are sitting in your living room, driving through the night, or wrestling with the weight of betrayal, what's your name? What's breaking your heart today? You feeling lost, hurt? Like the world's turned its back on you? I see you, fam. But let me tell you something straight from the heart. Guided by God's eternal wisdom, life is a mirror. And what you put out comes back not by your hand, but by His divine justice. God didn't create you to drown in pain or chase revenge. He crafted you to rise, to heal, to walk in His purpose no matter who tries to break you. The world may try to dim your light, but God's calling you to shine brighter than ever. You want to know how to outsmart the hurt? How to stand tall when life hits hard? Lean in, because I'm about to share a divine truth that'll transform your life, a truth about karma, about God's justice, about the power of your choices. This ain't just talk. It's a holy blueprint for rising above, for healing your wounds, for walking in God's peace. Let's answer His call together. Fam, God's got you and He never misses. Let me tell you something powerful straight from God's truth. Life is a mirror. What you put into it comes right back, blessed or burdened by His divine order. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it will come back because God's justice is perfect. You see, karma doesn't rush, it's guided by His timing. Karma waits patiently for the right moment, the right place, the right season. And when it shows up, it arrives with full memory and full intention, carrying God's righteous purpose. Now I want you to think back. Fam, what's your story? Think about the people who hurt you when all you did was love them with a heart God gave you. Think about the ones you lifted, praying for their rise, who turned around and pushed you down, God's call to love. Think about the ones you trusted, opening your soul in faith, who twisted that trust into a weapon and stabbed you in the back, defying God's command for honesty. You weren't perfect, none of us are, for we all fall short, but your heart was real, molded by His love. You meant well, guided by His light, and they took advantage of that, turning from His path. But let me tell you something else, with God's strength in my voice. Your job is not to seek revenge. That's not your mission, not your calling in His kingdom. You don't need to plot in darkness. You don't need to post in anger. You don't need to try to make them feel the pain they caused you. Life has its own justice system, designed by the Almighty, and believe me, it never forgets, because God's truth always prevails. People think they can plant poison and harvest peace under God's watchful eye, that they can throw dirt and stay clean in His presence, that they can tear down the very people who loved them, supported them, believed in them with a faith rooted in Him, and still somehow rise to His glory. But let me tell you something loud and clear, with God's fire in my soul. Life doesn't work like that when you're defying His will. The universe created by His hand doesn't operate on tricks. The Spirit doesn't move through lies, it flows with His truth. What you plant is what grows in God's garden. That's not just philosophy, that's His law, a law of nature, a law of energy, a law of spirit ordained by the Creator. You don't get to put evil into the world and expect God's blessings to fall at your feet. You don't get to break hearts crafted by His love and expect your own to remain whole. You don't get to betray people who would have fought for you in His name, and then wonder why you're surrounded by emptiness when God's presence is absent. Because everything you plant, every action, every word, every intention offered before His throne, it all grows, and it all comes back, sealed by His divine justice. See, we live in a world that tempts people to move fast, take shortcuts, chase pleasure over God's principles. But the universe, under His command, it plays the long game, guided by His eternal wisdom. It doesn't forget not a single deed done in His sight. It doesn't sleep, for God's justice is ever awake. And when it moves with His purpose, unshakable and true. So if someone planted deception, turning from His truth, they're going to harvest distrust in His time. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it's coming, because God's plan is perfect. Because when you put lies into the ground, you're growing thorns that reject His light. When you feed the soil with selfishness, you're growing weeds that choke His blessings. When you water the world with pain, you're harvesting your own heartbreak, far from His peace. That's karma, God's righteous balance. It doesn't ask for your permission, it just shows up when it's time, led by his divine hand. You might be wondering, fam, what's your pain right now? Why do you feel like they've gotten away with it? Why did the people who broke your heart, blessed by God's creation, seem to walk away clean? Why do the liars seem to keep smiling, hiding from his truth? Why does it feel like the ones who hurt you are living their best lives while you're still healing? Let me break it down with God's clarity. Just because someone hasn't crashed yet doesn't mean they're not speeding toward a wall built by their own choices against his will. Just because you can't see the storm doesn't mean the sky, under God's command, isn't about to break. Some folks are walking in sunlight with a hurricane building behind them, unseen but ordained by him. You can't see it from where you are, but it's coming, because God's justice is sure. Trust that life has a way of balancing his books, keeping his promises. When you feel God's call to let go, you don't need to chase his justice, it's already on its way. Swift and true. See, the longer karma takes, the harder it hits, because God's timing is precise, his strength divine. The delay isn't denial, it's his precision, his alignment, his perfect moment when the mask falls, when lies crumble before his truth, when God's mirror shows them what they've become, far from his design. And when that moment comes, it won't be gentle. It'll be real, raw, and guided by God's hand. And the beautiful thing, fam, it won't come from you, it won't come from your soul, your anger, or your need for vengeance. You're called to peace, not their pain. It will rise from God's life, from his universe, from his divine justice. When God's life teaches a lesson, he doesn't negotiate, his truth stands firm. He doesn't compromise, his wisdom prevails. He teaches through his design, through his lessons of emptiness, through God's echoes of the night, resonating with his presence. Regret is the shadow cast by turning from God's light, the tuition for lessons people refused when his love offered them freely. That's why you don't have to chase anyone in his name. Don't stalk their pages in secret. Don't rehearse what you'd say in anger. Don't wait for the apology God may not send. You don't need that to heal in his grace. You don't need to make them feel what they made you feel. That's not your burden, for God carries it. Your only job is to keep walking forward with your head up, with your heart clean in his sight, with your peace intact, anchored in his love. Because when you do right by people, when you love them for real with God's heart, when you stay honest even when it hurts under his gaze, you're planting something eternal in his kingdom. You're planting grace blessed by his mercy. You're planting peace rooted in his promise. You're planting strength forged in his fire. And those seeds, they grow too, watered by his spirit. And one day they bloom into a life you didn't even know you were building, a life filled with deeper love, truer friends, real opportunities, and inner peace. All blessed by God's hand. But the ones who threw away that love, who disrespected your honesty before him, laughed at your loyalty given in his name, walked away from your truth rooted in his light, they're not walking toward his blessings. They're walking toward consequences shaped by their choices against God's will. Some of them will pretend nothing happened. That's fine, let them pretend, for God sees their heart. Some of them will post like they're thriving. That's okay, let them perform, for God knows their soul. Some of them will even try to twist the story and make themselves the victim, defying his truth. Let them rewrite the script, because God's truth always comes back. And when it doesn't knock, it walks in with his authority and rearranges the whole room, revealing his justice. So let them think they're winning. Let them think they've moved on without God's judgment. Let them think life is good apart from his grace. Because peace is not a performance, it's a gift from God. Joy isn't a filter, it's his presence in your soul. And what you see on the outside isn't what they carry inside, far from his light. Regret is quiet, but it's loud in the dark when God's truth whispers. It speaks when the noise fades, when his spirit moves. It shows up when they lay down at night and the only voice left is their own, echoing God's conviction. And that voice, it says, you lost something real, blessed by God. It says, you broke someone who loved you in his name. It says, you had peace, God's gift, and traded it for power, a fleeting shadow. And that voice won't shut up. It's God's whisper in their soul. It follows them, it haunts them, it becomes the shadow they can't outrun, cast by turning from his path. And don't get it twisted. Fam, this ain't about wishing bad on people. It's about trusting God's process, trusting that you don't have to fall to their level to see his justice, trusting that his life is wiser than your anger, that God sees what you don't, that the same force that gave you peace will handle your justice in his perfect way. You didn't lose when they left, for God remained with you. You didn't lose when they lied, for his truth held you. You didn't lose when they chose someone else or chose ego over love or silence over God's truth. They lost, turning from his blessing. They lost access to a real one, crafted in his image. They lost someone who would have gone to the ends for them, driven by his love. They lost someone who was solid in a world of shaky, grounded in his strength. And one day they'll know it in his light. It might be when they're alone, far from his comfort. It might be when they're in a crowd but feel empty, missing his presence. It might be when they see you thriving, blessed by God's grace, and realize you did it without them, walking in his purpose. That's when karma, God's righteous balance, taps them on the shoulder. That's when regret, sent by his truth, eats at them. And by then, it's too late. Because you're already too far gone in his glory. You've already grown in his wisdom. You've already healed in his love. You've already become the person their betrayal tried to break, stronger in his name. And there's no going back, for God's path leads forward. So hold your head high, fam, as God lifts you. Keep your spirit steady, anchored in his peace. Keep your heart open, not to them, but to his life, to what's next in his plan, to the beauty that follows the pain, promised by his grace. Because you've got better things to do than look back at those who turn from God's light. I let them plant what they planted against his will. Let his life harvest what it needs to harvest in his time. You just keep planting truth rooted in his word. Keep planting love guided by his spirit. Keep planting peace blessed by his presence. Because your season is coming, ordained by God, and when it comes, it'll be too big to be denied by any force. And that's his truth. What they sowed is what they'll reap in his justice. Because karma, guided by God, never misses. Never. You, the one who gave all you had in his name, the one who showed up with a whole heart shaped by God, the one who stood solid while they crumbled into betrayal against his call. Let me speak directly to your soul. Fam, what's your name? What's God stirring in you right now? Sometimes you don't need more noise. You need his truth, his clarity, his reminder that you're not crazy, you're not weak, and you're definitely not broken beyond his repair. You who were betrayed, you who were laughed at, you who were made to feel like your kindness, a gift from God, was some kind of flaw. Let me tell you something that might just change the way you see all of this through his eyes. Your value didn't decrease because someone else couldn't see it in God's light. Your light, lit by his spirit, didn't stop shining just because they turned their back on his grace. And your love, your deep, real, loyal love poured out in his name, that didn't go to waste. It went exactly where it was supposed to go through you, a vessel of his love. It passed through you like water through hands. And though they didn't hold on to it, it still flowed, blessed by God. That love still mattered in his kingdom. That loyalty still counted before his throne, because it revealed something powerful. Who you are, created in his image. You see, when they walked away, when they ghosted you, when they stabbed you in the back, they didn't take your worth with them. They only revealed who they were, far from God's design. Their leaving wasn't the end of you, it was the unveiling of them, exposed by his truth. Let that sink in, fam. Because people who break others to feel powerful are already broken inside, far from God's healing. And hurting people hurt people, ignoring his call to love. Their betrayal wasn't about your value shaped by God. It was about their emptiness, apart from his fullness. Their disloyalty didn't mean you weren't enough in his eyes. It meant they weren't ready for the weight of someone so real, so true, so rare, crafted by his hand. But I'm not here to talk about them. I'm here to talk about you because this is your story now, written by God's grace. And your role, your mission in His kingdom is to rise, not to get revenge, not to get even, not to sit there bitter and angry, holding on to a pain they walked away from, defying God's peace. No, your role is to rise in His strength. You rise by letting go, not because you're weak, not because you're soft, but because you're wise enough in His Spirit to know that carrying their sin on your back will only keep you from His blessing. That's not your burden, it's theirs to face before God. That's not your weight to carry, He carries it for you. Let them carry it in His judgment. Let His life handle it in His time. Let karma, guided by God's justice, do what it always does. Your job? Heal in His love. Yeah, transform in His grace. Rise in His power. And let me say this clear, with God's fire in my voice, you don't need closure to close the chapter in His book. You don't need an apology to move forward in His plan. You don't need to sit across from the people who hurt you and hear them say, "I'm sorry," before you start building your peace in His presence. Because here's the hard truth revealed by God. Some people will never admit what they did, turning from His light. Some people will lie to themselves so much they can't even see His truth anymore. And if you wait for them to give you permission to heal, you'll stay stuck in a story that no longer serves God's purpose for you. So don't wait, fam. Don't wait for them to grow up in His wisdom. Don't wait for them to confess before His throne. Don't wait for them to realize what they had in His blessing, because you're missing out on His calling. That's not your journey anymore. Your journey is now sacred in His eyes. It's personal, blessed by His hand. It's yours, ordained by God. You rise by choosing yourself every single day in His grace, in the silence, in the pain, in the moments where the memories hit hardest and you wonder if it was all your fault, in the moments where you replay the betrayal like a movie, trying to figure out where you went wrong before God. Let me stop you right there, fam, with His truth. You didn't go wrong. You went real in His love. You went honest in His light. You went all in, guided by His Spirit. That's not a mistake. That's a masterpiece, crafted by God. And yes, sometimes masterpieces get stained by the hands of people who can't see their value in His eyes. But that doesn't make the art less beautiful. It's still His creation. It just means you were in the wrong gallery, among those blind to God's light. So now it's time to change rooms, to step into His purpose. You rise by forgiving, not because they deserve it, but because you do in God's mercy. Because when you forgive, you take your power back in His strength. You unchain yourself from the cycle, free in His grace. You stop replaying the scene, stop rehearsing the argument. Stop looking for the right words to say to someone who is never listening, deaf to God's truth. But forgiveness doesn't mean you excuse what they did against His will. It doesn't mean you let them back in, ignoring His protection. It means you stop letting them live rent-free in your head, claiming God's peace. It means you stop letting their actions define your future, destined by God. Your future is bigger than thence His vision. It's bigger than this pain, it's His healing. It's bigger than the betrayal, it's His purpose. And guess what? They don't get to follow you there, for God's path is yours alone. You're building something they can't access, not because you're bitter, but because you're better now in His light. Wiser in His wisdom, stronger in His power, sharper in His clarity. Let me tell you this, fam, the people who left you lied on you, betrayed you, doubted you. They were never your people in God's plan. Your people don't break you, they lift you in His name. Your people don't betray you, they stand with you in His truth. Your people don't dim your light, they reflect it, shining in His glory. So stop mourning the loss of people who are only meant to be lessons sent by God to teach you. Stop begging the door to open again when God closed it for your protection. You've outgrown their dysfunction, evolved in His grace. You've moved past their games, guided by His wisdom. And the further you walk in His purpose, the smaller their voices become, drowned out by His call. They thought they buried you, but they didn't know you were a seed planted by God. And now you're rising in His light. You're not a victim, you're a warrior, armed with God's strength. And every scar on your soul is just proof that you didn't give up, that you still loved in his name, that you still hoped in his promise, that you still believed in his plan, even when they gave you every reason not to. That strength forged in God's fire. And that strength, it's going to take you places betrayal never could by his hand. It's going to elevate you in his glory. It's going to position you in his purpose. It's going to open doors that pain tried to lock, sealed by his power. So keep rising, fam. Keep showing up in his light. Keep choosing love, not the naive kind, but the real kind, the kind that starts with you. The kind that protects your peace in his presence. The kind that says, I won't let what broke me define me, I'll let God's purpose shape me. Because here's what happens when you rise in his name, his life responds. Opportunities come sent by his hand. Peace finds you rooted in his promise. Purpose becomes clear, revealed by his spirit. And the very people who walked away, they'll watch you from a distance and they won't understand how you're still glowing, still growing, still standing in God's glory. But you'll know, fam, you'll know that pain didn't break you, it built you in his strength. You'll know that betrayal didn't stop your story, it started a new one, written by God. You'll know that every time they tried to dim your light, they only helped you see your glow more clearly in his presence. So rise for your peace, blessed by God, for your healing, guided by his love, for your future, destined by his plan. Because you are not what they did to you, you are what you choose next in his grace. And when you choose to rise, nothing can hold you down, for God is with you. Now, let's talk about the return, because there will be one, fam, in God's perfect timing. Trust me, you don't throw stones and expect the ripples to stop halfway, not under his watch. You don't plant poison and expect roses to grow in his garden. Life created by God doesn't work like that. The universe under his command may be quiet, but it is always keeping receipts, always guided by his truth. One day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day, the same people who betrayed you are going to feel something they can't name, a weight sent by God's justice. It'll creep in slow, no noise, no announcement, just a heaviness in the chest, a silence that follows them room to room, a reflection in the mirror that suddenly looks unfamiliar, far from God's design. See, that's regret born of turning from his light. That's the storm they never saw coming, ordained by his will. And it hits harder than any revenge ever could, because it's God's truth at work. They'll think about you not just in passing, not just on your birthday, but deep in the night when the world is quiet and the masks are off. When the followers can't see them, when the lights don't mean anything, when the filters fade, and all they have is their truth before God. And their truth will scream in his presence. They'll remember how you stood by them, faithful in his name, how you showed up, driven by his love, how you loved without keeping score, guided by his grace, how you gave them honesty in a world drowning in lies, reflecting his truth, how you saw the best in them when even they didn't believe it existed, blinded to God's vision. And when they realized what they threw away, turning from his blessing, that's when karma, God's righteous balance, taps them on the shoulder and says, remember me in his name. There's no reset button for betrayal, no refund on a broken heart, no edit option for the past, not in God's divine order. And karma's greatest move, guided by him, it doesn't just take something away, it leaves a space, a deep, echoing space where something beautiful, blessed by God, used to be. That emptiness becomes their teacher, sent by his wisdom, and trust me, it teaches loud in his truth. Some will try to come back not out of growth, but out of desperation. Not because they become better people in his light, but because life hasn't been too kind to them since you walked away following God's path. They'll send the hey stranger texts, dropping little breadcrumbs, hoping you'll follow, ignoring God's protection. They'll act like time should have erased what they did against his will. But time doesn't heal guilt, it exposes it in God's light. Some won't reach out at all, not because they don't think about you. Oh, they do, haunted by God's truth. Every time someone disappoints them, they remember how you never did, standing firm in his love. Every time someone lies to them, they think about the truth you always offered, rooted in his word. but their pride won't let them admit it, keeping them from God's grace. So they stay silent, haunted, tormented by a memory they can't escape, shaped by his justice. And then there's the loud ones, the ones who mock you louder now than they did before, the ones who try to bury God's truth by screaming over it. But volume doesn't cancel guilt in his presence. Laughing louder doesn't mean they're not crying on the inside, far from his peace. Some people put on a show for the world, hoping it'll distract from the mess behind the curtain, blind to God's light. But when the lights go out and they're alone with themselves, that's when God's truth comes for them. Don't envy their highlight reel, fam. Don't measure your peace, given by God, by their performance. They're not as happy as they pretend to be, apart from his joy. Regret is a quiet punishment, but it's deafening when you try to outrun God's truth. The ones who hurt you and thought they were getting away with it. They're not running forward, they're running in circles, lost from God's path. Some of them are standing still in places you've outgrown, places you've evolved from in his grace. You move forward not because it didn't hurt, but because staying there would have broken you in ways you couldn't recover from. And God called you higher. You moved forward because you knew your future, destined by him, was too important to build on broken trust and counterfeit love, far from his truth. You stepped forward not to prove anything to them. You didn't move out of spite. You moved because you finally understood your worth in God's eyes. You finally looked in the mirror and said, I deserve better in his name. And that better wasn't just a person, it was a mindset, a standard, a new kind of peace that doesn't beg to be kept, blessed by God. That's growth in his wisdom. That's strength in his power. That's healing in his love. And that's your superpower, given by him. And listen closely, fam, don't stop. Don't look back. Don't trade your healing, God's gift, for their apology. Some of them will never give it, blind to his truth. Some of them don't even know how, far from his grace. But you don't need their words to move on in his plan. You've got work to do, a life to build, a purpose to walk in, all ordained by God. Let them sit with what they did, facing his judgment. Let them carry the weight of their choices apart from his peace. You are not their punishment, you are their lesson sent by God, and the most powerful lessons. They don't come in screams, they come in silence, guided by his Spirit. They come when everything else stops working, when their fake world collapses, when their masks crack, when their laughter feels empty, all in God's timing. That's when your absence becomes the loudest truth they ever ignored, revealed by his light. Some of them thought they were playing games, not knowing God's life doesn't play fair, it delivers his justice. Life watches under his gaze. Life waits in his timing. And when the time is right, it delivers the consequences, sealed by his truth. And no amount of pretending can stop the delivery in God's order. So what do, fam? You keep walking in his light. You hold your head high, not in arrogance, but in clarity given by God. You keep your spirit steady, not to prove a point, but because peace is your new home, built by him. You open your heart again, not because it can't be broken, but because love still deserves a place to live in his kingdom. And you do it all knowing that when you live right, when you love right, when you love right, when you let go in his name, karma, guided by God's justice, takes the rest. And trust me, it never misses in his plan. They will reap what they sowed, every tear they caused, every lie they told, every time they looked you in the eyes and pretended, all against God's truth. It's all in the soil now, and the harvest is coming, ordained by him. But you're the light shining in his glory. You're the survivor standing in his strength. You're the walking testimony that pain doesn't get the last word, God does. You turned wounds into wisdom, guided by his Spirit. You turned endings into beginnings, blessed by his grace. You turned betrayal into a bridge, built by his love. And now you're walking into places they'll never reach, destined by God. Because you didn't just survive, you grew in his light. Let that be your focus, not their downfall, not their regrets, but your rise, your healing, your joy, all in God's name. Because life doesn't bless bitterness, it blesses release in His grace. So let go. Let God. Let karma, His righteous balance. And keep building the life they never thought you could. Empowered by His strength. Because while they're busy dodging the past, you're out here living proof that moving on is the ultimate comeback in His kingdom. And remember this, fam, when it's all said and done, the regret of hurting someone who loved you purely, crafted by God, that regret will eat them alive in His light. Because karma, guided by God's justice, never misses. Family, if you're still here, you're not like most, you're chosen, called by God to rise above the pain, to heal in His love, to walk in His purpose. What's your name? Where you at right now, fam? You carrying the scars of betrayal, or you ready to shine in God's light? I've just laid out something real, something raw, a divine truth about karma, about God's justice, about the power of your choices to shape a life that no one can break. This ain't just words, it's a holy call from God Himself to live wiser, love deeper, and rise stronger than the world expects. You were told life is a mirror reflecting God's truth, that what you sow comes back in His timing. You learned that karma, guided by His justice, waits patiently, delivering consequences with His precision. You were shown that your mission isn't revenge, but rising in His peace, healing in His love. You were reminded that what you plant, love, truth, peace, grows eternal in His kingdom, while betrayal reaps emptiness apart from Him. You were urged to let go, to forgive, not for them, but for your freedom in God's grace. And you were called to rise, to transform pain into purpose, to walk into a future they'll never touch, blessed by God's hand. This is your moment, fam. God's calling you to step into His victory, to heal your heart, to dominate with His peace. Will you answer His call? Will you carry this truth like a torch, lighting your path through the darkness? The world's full of lies, betrayal, and noise. But you're different now. You're God's warrior, walking with His wisdom, His strength, His love. So don't just walk away inspired, walk away transformed in His name. Let this truth burn in your soul. When pain tries to pull you back, let God's love lift you higher. When the world tries to dim your shine, let His light blaze through you. When they try to break you, rise taller, stronger, unshaken, because God's got you. I'm calling you to act. Fam, drop a 77 in the comments to proclaim you're walking in God's truth. Share this message with someone who needs it, someone hurting, someone lost, someone ready to rise in His light. Like this post, join this family of faith, subscribe to this journey, because we're building something bigger than ourselves, rooted in God's purpose. Tell me what's God stirring in your heart right now. What pain is He turning into your purpose? Drop your story, your fire, your testimony in the comments, because your voice might be the spark someone needs to heal, to rise, to shine in His name. Go be the light God created you to be. Be the peace in the storm. Be the unstoppable force of His love. God bless you, fam. Stay strong, stay faithful, and let your life, your rise, your right in Him speak louder than any betrayal. Let's move, let's heal, let's win together in God's glory.